Now we're gonna dive here with our class. So there is this woman, she was a psychiatrist, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, that she spoke about grief, that there are five stages of grief. First is denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. But what she addressed always is that it is not necessarily that happen in this specific order. So some people might experience the different stages in different orders or skip a part as well or revisit them multiple times. So it's not exactly that need to be in this order. Because obviously grief is deeply personal and that not follow a specific timeline. And denial and sometimes happen because obviously we just lost somebody that we love and we just feel obviously in shock because suddenly feel unreal when you just cannot believe that this is happening. And as well reality can feel unbearable because of this loss. And just want to say as well that when we're speaking about grief, I want to speak about grief about when we lose something. For example, even when we're losing a job, for example, or an opportunity, or we suddenly losing a partner, or not only through that, but in the sense as a separation, a divorce, and we can feel grief in different ways as well. Not only when somebody die, but it's almost like somebody die from our life, or a work just finished, or something is like an end chapter. And even as a women, as a woman, we all have this cycle of we have this oval that then if it's not fertilized, it go all the way in our menstruation cycle as well, like in the bleeding. So in every single cycle of a woman, you actually have this death process as well happening in our system. So it's interesting how within our body all the time is happening death, and the cells as well, they regenerate. There is all the time happening this process of that within ourselves as well. So just to put in the perspective that when we speak about grief, we're speaking about all these levels of grief. So as we were speaking, one of the stages is denial. Another stage is like anger, because you just can feel like frustrated, and because the injustice of the loss that can be directed toward yourself or toward others or a higher power, for example. And you can be upset with God, obviously, and or upset, for example, if you lost your job, you can be upset with the system, and when there is this just frustration and anger and rage, and the third stage is bargaining. That is thoughts like, if I only have done something differently in an attempt to regain control or reverse the loss. So it's something when you start, oh, if I could have done this, perhaps this will be not happening, or I could have helped this, or if it's to do that you lost a job, maybe I should have done this way, and then this will not be happening. So then our mind start like questioning and going very analytical in some aspects. And the fourth stage is depression. That is this profound sadness, hopelessness, withdrawal, apathy. Suddenly there is just this almost like, okay, I'm just don't want to see this, don't want to deal with this, and we just enter in this cocoon space of profoundness and sadness. And the five stage, it is the acceptance, when we come to accept and we can already say, okay, this is actually happening. Um, so obviously it's not exactly a happy resolution, but it's a quiet acknowledgement of reality, allowing the space for healing and adjustment. So it's in this moment that you say, okay, and this is real, this is actually happening, and you just allow yourself to accept. And through that acceptance is where all the digestion really starts sinking in. So I feel that this is, I really like these five stages, because sometimes when you, if you ever go through grief in any moment of your life in any way, you can even look at these five stages just to see as where you are at, because sometimes some people feel so angry that, and they don't understand from why, or they cannot understand that this is as well just a normal process of grief. So I feel that's why it's important, um, to bring the awareness to this, because then when you are going through this process, you already can support you and feeling, "Oh, okay, yeah, I'm frustrated with this, I'm angry. I'm gonna allow myself to process and digest." And then when you start saying, "Oh, if I could have done something," then you are like, "Okay, yeah, I'm going through this process now. Okay, it's okay. I allow myself to feel this way, but I know this just overthinking and thinking too much in my logical mind." So this is the reason why we're speaking about these subjects, because it's almost that instead of like then going in a situation, we kind of understand already the tools that we have to then, when that situation happen, we have more tools to cope with it. And when we're speaking about grief and sadness, in Chinese medicine, the metal element is the element that rules these emotions, these two emotions. And it's very interesting because metal is an excellent conductor of heat and electricity. And they as well, metal is very malleable and very strong as well. And the metal elements symbolize the process of letting go, and as well represent the autumn tree. So it's like the tree that shed the leaves in autumn, and it teaches us about, for example, a tree naturally just do this because he do this for himself. He's going through this dead process and of losing the leaf to protect himself in the winter, to be able to survive, to be able to receive more the rays of the sun. And then when it start like the spring, obviously the tree will start growing again their leaf and going through the whole process. So, and even in nature, we have this process of grief and loss and rebirth as well. And when balance, metal bring us strength, precision, integrity, and emotional clarity. And when there is this balance, it can lead to respiratory issues, skin conditions, digestion problems, constipation, emotional struggles like prolonged grief, rigidity, or perfectionism. And And I notice a lot actually that sometimes people don't realize how important is to understand grief, because I have seen many people that I don't even think that they know that they are carrying this imprint of grief in themselves. And actually, I just suddenly was remembering one friend that have really strong dry skin and eczema, and I really when feel him, I realized that he never actually grieved totally the loss of the mother and the father, and he's already 60 years old. And I feel that this, like, gripping into this lack of processing, of emotional processing, perhaps is causing all these conditions in his physical body without even he realizing. That's why I really passionate about us understanding deeper what are our emotions, and what is inside ourselves, what is inside our heart, what is inside our mind, what is inside our subconscious mind. Some people say, but why is it even important to understand this? It is important because maybe some of the conditions that you have, even physically, can be related with this. Um, and as well, something beautiful about the metal element is that it is associated with receiving our gift. So I love that most medals in competitions are actually, bronze, gold, and silver. That is actually metals. And so it's literally when we connect with the metal element, when we allow ourselves to feel the death and understand the death process, we can actually overcome sadness and we can actually receive the gift of joy and receive the gift of all that we are and all that we came here to do. Very good. And in Chinese medicine, and grief is very connected with our lungs and as well with the Um, I think it's as well with the large intestines as well, grief. But anyway, definitely in the lungs. And unprocessed grief can stagnate the lung qi. So that's why somebody can feel like, for example, can have shortness of breath, of fatigue, of low energy, because as we know, our breath capacity and the best that we breathe is helping our whole system. That's why a person with weakened immunity many times can be related, obviously, with the lack um, of proper breath, of a stagnancy in the lungs, and then have a tendency to catch up colds or develop respiratory issues. And it's really interesting because I can think about another person that I know that as well, I can see that she never overcome the grief and loss of her mother. And she as well already has 70 years old, but and that you can see by having that is almost this sadness inside the heart of the loss of the mother. And she catch colds all the time. Like she's always with a cold. And it's very interesting when we just start like connecting the dots. And then perhaps it's almost like processing grief is just like having a grief ceremony, like almost like, okay, I'm really grieving still the loss of this job, for example, or I'm grieving still the loss of this baby, and then you just dedicate the time to nourish yourself, so then the joy can be restored in your body, then the flow of chi can come back to you, and the grief as have a lot to do with the lungs as well affects the heart, and the heart is the organ of joy. That's why when we lose somebody as well, or lose a job or something, sometimes our heart will feel like broken in billion pieces. And joy is pretty much like the opposite of grief in some aspects. But at the same time, they kind of help each other because when I lose, for example, one of my best friends, and it was I don't know, the strongest feeling I have ever felt of brokenhearted and emptiness inside myself. But then it's interesting as that gateway of death opening me to my greatest joy as well, because through understanding death and the sadness of it, I understood that I needed to be happy, that life was too short to grasp in the sadness, and that she was actually propelling me to be joyful and happy. So chronic or unexpected grief can manifest as heaviness in our chest, shallow breathing, sobbing, and even long-term conditions like I already mentioned of asthma and chronic fatigue. So sorrows really depletes our vital energy. So that's why it is okay feeling sorrow, and we need to allow ourselves to go through the process of sorrow, but we just need to understand as well that as the tree that loses the leaves in to prepare for the winter, then we need to be able to transition through cycles to be able to open ourselves up again to the spring and the summer and moving on through the life cycles. And then there is as well in Chinese medicine they speak about sadness associated with the lungs and the large intestines. And the large and intestine are as well responsible for elimination, physically and emotionally as well. So, as we know, our digestion system not only digests what we eat, but digests what we are thinking, what we are processing as well. So, chronic sadness, depression, for example, can affect the lung qi, the energy of our body. That's why, for example, somebody who is sad can feel even more fatigue, like even more shortness of breath. Perhaps their voice gonna be like they don't have a loud voice because it's almost that they lost their whole vitality and they just speak very quiet. They have a weakened and immune system, and as well sadness are affect our heart, and sometimes we're gonna have insomnia because it's gonna be difficult to with too much overthinking, difficult to sleep at night, this big hole in the heart. So then it will be this sense of emptiness.